there's a couple of other things that we still want to touch base on. My favorite personal thing is common bitting myths, because I feel like, so we've touched on the fact that thicker is not always better. It's not always kinder. Wider is not always better or kinder. Single jointed is not always nicer. What are some of the other things that you think people need to be aware of with that?
I think two things would be quite nice to answer in that one. So and they relate to each other. So another thing that is, I think, a little bit misunderstood sometimes is the concept of pole pressure. Okay, and how much of it.
And we've actually got a question about Philip Boucher in the waiting in the comments.
I'm getting there.
Ria, she is about to answer your.
Yes, she is. Okay, so let's look at that a little bit. So the first of all, pole pressure is exerted by the bit when the bit rotates to some extent
towards the nose.
Towards the nose, to some extent, and pulls down on the cheek piece of the bridle, and the cheek piece is attached to the pole piece, so it's the pressure of the cheek piece on the pole piece that puts pressure on a horse's pole. That is important. So it's not the metal of the bit in the horse's mouth, it's leather on the horse's pole that is the source of how that pressure is transferred. So first of all, and it was actually, I think it was Neo Schuler that did these tests, that did some research on it. They put a strain gauge to try and test the degree of pole pressure. And the findings were really quite interesting. So first of all, the degree of pole pressure is not as much as what we thought it was. So they found that on average, the degree of pole pressure exerted by bits that exert pole pressure, and I'm going to answer that question in a minute, is about 20% of the tension on the rein. So the force put on the rein. Now, obviously, if somebody's pulling hard on the rein, that 20% is more, so then there will be more pole pressure. So, but it's not quite to the extent that I think we initially thought it was. Having said that, there is a degree of pole pressure pretty much whenever you put the bridle on, because the bit hangs on the bridle, which is why the recently designed, when I say recent, it's over the last 5 years. And the anatomical bridles and the pole pieces that are designed, which I'm very much in favor of.
Is that a good? It's not a woo-woo.
No, it takes the pressure from it doesn't press on the horse's ear cartilage, and it does offer a degree of pole relief. And
I see a few of them are also much broader to go with the thickers.
To spread the pressure a little bit. I don't like it when the padding is too thick, because I think the horses get hot. But the principle of distributing that pressure and allowing for that pretension, they call it, that just from the bit hanging on the bridle, on the cheek piece transferring to the pole, has been sort of met by some of these, let's call them anatomical bridles. Now, as regards to which of the bits put the most pole pressure. So remember that range is about 20 to 30% of the tension on the rein. So the upper end of that are ring gags. They do put quite a bit of pole pressure on, because when it does that, when it rotates through, this is pulling down. So, and any gag bit, ring gag bits or rope gag bits, which is a pulley leverage, it puts pressure downward on the pole and upward on the corners of the mouth.
You're compressing the horse's
head, basically. Now, the dominant force there is the up on the corners of the mouth, because metal on tissue in the mouth is always going to be a stronger force and a greater discomfort for the horse than what leather on its pole outside of its mouth, if that makes sense. But still, there is some degree of force. So gag bits, ring bits do exert pole pressure on a horse on the pole. Palum bits do to some extent as well, especially if you've got
I can see there's actually a lot less play there than
not
on
as
the
much.
ring.
If the curb chain brings some pole pressure in as well.
Can you please flatten that curb chain? It's really upsetting.
Yes, that's a good thing to do. You must roll
Always
out
turn
your
your curb chains until they're flat.
So when you use a curb chain on a palum, it does also add to the pole pressure, but remember that pole pressure is still only a percentage of the pressure that's applied to the rein.
And things like the filet-boucher,
Ah,
okay?
so
That's also called a hanging cheek.
yes, just before we get to that one, loose ring bits also exert a degree of pole pressure. Yeah, they're actually found in these tests. So the only bit that doesn't exert pole pressure is what we refer to as a drop cheek or a hanging cheek or a fillet boucher.
Oh,
It actually provides negative pole pressure. It's the only one that registered negative pole pressure.
that's amazing.
Yes, it is amazing. So when it turns, because a hanging cheek has got, now that's the only one I didn't bring with as a
Go
little
Google
demo.
it. Don't be lazy.
You can go and Google it. But a hanging cheek has a little projection to and an eye to which your cheek piece is attached, and then a ring for attaching the rein to. It doesn't have any shank below the mouthpiece. So it's the shank below the mouthpiece combined with above that creates your fixed leverage. So the hanging cheek, it is regarded to be, on my scale, we'd put it at about a 4 in terms of strength. It is a little bit stronger, a little bit different in its action, in how it's suspended in the horse's mouth, put it that way. But when it turns like that, it actually, and if you go and look now, and anybody who's got a hanging cheek should go and do, when you go and look, if you put pressure on the rein tomorrow, have a look at the cheek pieces of the bridle, and they're actually going to bulge just slightly when you put pressure. Look, if you pull really hard and the bit turns very far in the horse's mouth, then that changes. But with, call it regular rein pressure, you'll actually see the cheek pieces will bulge slightly, and those bulging cheek pieces actually provide pole relief. It's the only one that registered negative pole pressure.